Glacia, it's so good to have you here back in the podcast. For those who missed our first interview, Glacia is an amazing intuitive life coach. She's a health coach and an ascension guide. And right before recording this episode, we were both sharing a little bit about the ascension process and the shadow work that we've both been doing and this process of collapsing and completion. So I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here again.
Okay, so let's start with a lighter question. I have experiencing these new levels of energy, almost like there's a new light. Everything feels different. So are we getting new energies, new lights?
We absolutely are. Yeah, there's a wave that's come in that brings in a much higher energy for all of us that is activating every single person on the planet, actually. Nobody's getting untouched by this. And I like to look at it as kind of a waveform. And when you have a sound and it creates a waveform, you can add in more waves into that waveform, and you get a more complete sound, right? So that's kind of what we're doing. So we're bringing in the energy of unity and neutrality. So that's where a lot of people are having to face things in their shadows and take accountability for their creations and decide, do I want to continue creating this or do I want to destroy this? So we're looking at the energies of creation and destruction more as forces that we get to work with rather than one is right, one is wrong, or the polarized point of view, right? So we're bringing in that third point of neutrality so that we're no longer polarized.
Wow. I love that you said that everyone is being here with this light code, right? Everyone in some of us are aware of these energies because we do this work. We just tune in, but anybody can start tuning in with these energies. So it seems like if we're going to talk more like, let's say, in the 3D language, there is a huge like process of like purging right now for a lot of us actively doing this work. Like we are talking, it feels exhausting at time, almost like, God, haven't I done enough? There's such a deeper process of purging and clearings. For me, the word that resonates the most is purification.
Mhm.
And one emotion that has been, I would say, purify a lot out of my body is grief. Like I can be in a total state like of prayer. I was last week just in a beautiful state of prayer, just connect with source. And then all of a sudden this image of my 12-year-old came in and I was weeping, like no external triggers, nothing, but it was like it seemed like it came from such a deep place of repression, like in a place of my unconscious. And I start weeping. In that moment, I realized, wow, this is a process of purification because we want peace, we want joy, we want to love, we want freedom. And there's no escape. We have to go to the process of purification. So I wonder what you have to say about that.
Yeah, well, and you're absolutely right. We do have to go through the process of it. And what's happening is as we've been in the kind of the lower consciousness, right? We haven't been accessing that higher consciousness. Some people access a lot higher, but we've still been kind of stuck in the 3D materialism and attachment and all of that. And as these new light codes keep coming in, what they're doing is they're bringing multidimensional awareness. So then we start to notice what's trapped in our cells. So our cells came imprinted with all the trauma and sadness and pain and suffering from the bodies that created them, right? From before, all our ancestors, our entire lineage. And then the soul also imprints the body with the past life traumas. So then we're now becoming aware because our light body is expanding, our consciousness is actually expanding into our light body. Our light body's been there the whole time. But when we expand in our awareness into these greater levels of multidimensionality, we become very aware of the pain and sadness and suffering that's been there the whole time. We just didn't notice that it was there because that's who we've always been, right? So now it's coming up to the surface, very much like the light is coming in like water, right? And creating this flood within us that brings everything up into our awareness for us to handle and process and clear. And this is where the purging in every single level of our being, our spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical bodies are all being purged. And this is so that we have room for the joy, for the peace, and for all these other things that we've been asking for to come in. We have to make space for them first.
That makes so much sense to me. So, are we all being upgraded in a way?
We are, yeah,
Yeah.
we are all being upgraded. And what people decide to do with these upgrades determines how their life goes. And so, embracing it, surrendering to it, allowing yourself to feel the emotions, but not create new stories about them, right? That's where we anchor things in deeper and create another layer of it, or we release it and peel another layer off. And so, how we move through things is really important. And there is no escaping it. We have to move through it. And that's where, like that grief you were mentioning that came up, you had to sit with it and feel it and allow it to move, right? And when we don't allow it to move, we end up with physical disease.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I I think you just answered the question because I was going to ask, well, let's talk about also a lot of people who are not making the space, the time, or putting the energy to feel the feelings, to do the healing work, the transformation. And this comes from no judgment at all. Nothing wrong. Everybody has the power of choice. So would you say for the people who are not actively participating in this process, they are the ones that might be experiencing chronic anxiety or chronic depression and other kinds of physical conditions?
yeah, absolutely. And their lives will start to reflect whatever is going on within them will start to show up as physical experiences in their life, right? So if they're not making space for their emotions, they're probably going to start like losing their jobs, losing their homes, losing, material things because that has to do with space, right? And
Yeah,
so everything that we're not facing, the last place that it shows up is in the physical. So if it is showing up in the physical, there have been many opportunities to handle them in the energetic levels first.
yeah. Now, if we switch the language here and talk about, well, we have known now for many many years that when we have stored a lot of emotions, a lot of stress in the body, that gets manifest in the form of illnesses. But now you even put on other points like, well, this is also going to be manifest in people losing their jobs or losing money or losing a lot of material, maybe losing relationships. So is it correct to say, Glacia, that this this mirror effect, right, that is a law of the universe, in a way it's amplified now?
Yes, that's very accurate. It's massively amplified, and that's where we're facing our shadows too. Like everything is being mirrored back to us right now, and it can feel overwhelming. So, overwhelm is going to be a very real thing for many people. Time is also kind of sped up in a way because as we expand into our multidimensionality, things process a lot faster. So if we think about something and we're focused on it, it'll manifest pretty quickly. And this is why we've had a lot of practice with maintaining a positive focus, right? And redirecting our thoughts and at the same time allowing the energies to move. Because anytime we swallow back our pain or sadness, it settles into the body for later processing. And then eventually things happen where it just all gets released back to back because in order to integrate these activations, we have to keep up with the codes, right? So the codes that are being brought in, each code will activate something different, and then we have to process and integrate and assimilate it, right? And then the next one comes in. And these are happening so fast now that it will be very easy for people to create their nightmares, a living nightmare, if they are not careful in what they buy into.
Yeah. Well, and the good news of this, if we flip the coin here, is also our ability to manifest what we want and use these energies, use these accelerated energies to get very clear about what we want to create. And I think it's this is a worthwhile point for us to pause here and really talk about, because what I have found, even among a lot of my own clients, is that they are still so focused, even with all the work we do, sometimes weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, even the books they read, with a lot of people, they have mastered focusing on what they don't want
Yeah.
and keep talking about the childhood traumas, or still the anger they're holding or the limiting beliefs they're holding. And it's almost like a lot of people having the resistance to just sit down and just reflect on what is it that you want then. And this is old teachings, very old teachings of great personal growth teachers from the 30s, 40s, 60s, the masters, Neville, or I can't even remember their names, that they were teaching, that say, I don't like the term of law of attraction, but I'm gonna use, because it's so overused by the new age school, that I'm like, I don't like that. But let's say just the the power of manifestation. They always said, know what you want. And I think that those teachings were just incomplete because they didn't address all the unconscious material from trauma, which now we are, coaches like you or myself, we want to focus on the positivity and what we want to create, without denying also what is the unconscious. So we're doing both of the work, right? We're working all the centers now. We're not just doing the lower centers. We connecting all the centers so they can all be a clear channel to source. So I don't even know where I was going to go with this. Oh, with the good news that we can use these energies to create.
Yes, and clearing the space first to create is really important. And that's the big difference between, like Neville Goddard is one of my favorites.
Mine too.
Yeah, he's amazing. And his teachings are very valid too. It's just we're at a point now with our multidimensionality and the ascension process that that stuff can't be ignored, right? And so that's where in the world there's always been a lot of trauma, and people have been manifesting through that, for a very long time too, but being clear about what you don't want allows you to determine where you're going to place your focus, right? And that's the big difference of today, is that we actually have this amazing ability to heal ourselves, heal our lineage too, and shift timelines into a greater outcome for humanity, because it really looks like if things kept going the way that they're going now, it would be this apocalyptic reality, right? Because technology would take over, and the separation and the coldness between people, and kind of the uncaring and willingness to hurt or go to war. All of that stuff now we're having to look at. Are we really committed to living that? And what am I doing that is contributing to that? And so this gives people the choice between the two ways of being. And then coming into neutrality with it means that's the processing, right? The neutralizing of all of that trauma. And that is like creating the space to create from. It's like leveling the ground to build the house, right? So
Yes.
that's where we're at now, instead of just trying to build on what's there and not really process it all the way. Because it gets passed on. Anything that we don't process, we pass on to our children. And then that's a lens that we see the world through too. And so all of that, anything that's happened that's unfinished we're now having full circle completion with those. And that wasn't happening in different lifetimes and past timelines, right? So that's the huge difference that we have now is the full completion because of a culmination lifetime.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense because I was going to ask you, has this happened before, right? Has this massive energies and this kind of timeline has been present before? And you answers like, no, it's different this time because there's a sense of completion, and a lot of us chose to be here at this time to help with this completion process. And that resonates. Is it really I see us in such a place of like it's now or never. And I am positive, I'm optimistic. There's a sense of excitement in me, even though I know things can get hard, but things to me have been getting harder in a way since the pandemic, or even before the pandemic. Things start building up to this point right now. And it's interesting, we're recording this on November 5th, which is a huge day here in the United States. And I know it's a day that is going to impact not just the United States, it's going to impact the entire world depending what it happens today. But there's a sense that no matter what candidate wins today, to me, I look at the bigger picture, there's major shifts happening. And we got so polarized to the point here that, I have people saying to me, if you choose a certain candidate, I won't speak to you anymore. And that has never been a reality in my life. Or it's an illusion, it's not even reality. But we got to the point that we're so polarized that we either dissolve this polarization, or we're creating a war here. It's definitely a psychological war here in America, has been happening for many years now. And the other point I want to pull from what you just said, going back to a lot of the teachings of law of manifestation, you brought a piece that has been missing in those teachings for so many years for me, which is you need to create space first to create what you want. And I think this is such a piece because if we go back to, again, the teachings of the 80s and 90s, around when the movie The Secret came up, and a lot of like vision boards and think positively, there is this huge part missing. That is, well, you have to go also through a process of purification to make room. And that was not spoke about because there was a different level of consciousness at that time. And I think it was good for that time. But this law of manifestation needs to be upgraded, and people really understand that it's not just about focus on the positive, make vision boards, is also about aligning yourself energetically. And the only way of doing that is by purifying those old energies.
Exactly. Yeah, really allowing them to move because if we just try to add something on top of them, they're still going to be in there as a point of attraction, which is why people are so disappointed and believe that they can't manifest. And then they also believe that they can't have what they want because it never works for them, right? They're like, "Oh, that's for somebody else. I'm terrible at manifesting." When really it's we manifest through the sum total of our vibrational expression. So without clearing that stuff, and that means first facing it and discovering it
Yeah.
and
Well,
feeling, right? And that's what these activations are doing for us. It's really giving us this amazing opportunity to really feel into everything that's within us and turn within instead of looking out into the world for answers, really tuning in and turning inside to get the answers.
yeah, beautifully said. And I want to share something personal because I think this might resonate with a lot of people. What you just described, that person thinking there's something wrong with her, that she can't manifest, that was me. I had moments because I, being always a student, I was reading all the books, I was doing all the work. And I literally remember moments where I thought there's something terribly wrong with me because how come I cannot manifest? And today I can say that I'm grateful that the things I wanted did not manifest because they were still going, if I manifested, they were going to actually amplify this egoic doer in me. And when that doer in us get external validation, we keep doing that. So
Mhm.
I'm so grateful that I did not get to manifest from that place, because at least my lesson, and it might be a collective lesson for a lot of us, but my lesson I can say was no, this condition, this program that is your ego doing everything, is dying you. You don't want to create from this space anymore. You don't want to create from your third center anymore. There's a much more efficient and successful way of creating, which is not hard work, hustling, pushing, forcing, which is has left us with tremendous exhaustion. So I'm grateful that I didn't create, because if we get the validation from the world of what we're doing from that egoic place, we're just going to keep doing more of the same. So that was the aha moment. Of course, it wasn't one moment, it was many times crying, was many dark nights of the soul. But now talking to you, it's like, I get the lesson now.
Beautiful. Yeah. And then looking at the energies of creation and destruction too, because anything we create, we are responsible for it.
Yeah.
And that's where if you create something built in separation or from the ego, you then have to go back and destroy it somehow too, because you're accountable for it. And so as things speed up, this is where creating with intention, right? Being very clear that what we are creating is actually what we want. And that's not about material stuff anymore. It's just not. It's about connection, community, co-creation, collaboration, all of those energies where making the world a better place for everybody from that heart center rather than making the world better for me from that the center of your will, right? And so that's a huge step for all of us to recognize it's not about manifesting the Lamborghini, it's not about having the mansion with 20 rooms and, making billions of dollars, because that actually is built in separation. And when you create from that level, I mean, there's a lot to destroy there too. And it keeps people very separate from each other when they start building their when they manifest through the energy of separation rather than through the energy of unity. So that's a huge, huge turning point for humanity. Where we're at right now is to manifest from the heart and from the higher consciousness rather than the lower parts of the body, right? Where a lot of people have been manifesting from or taught to manifest from. Like the media kind of hands us what we should be manifesting, right? Like you need this, you want to be this person that accomplishes all these things. And really a lot of us have recognized, I want to be the person that has time to sit by the river in the sunshine. I want to be the person that takes it easy rather than, like you said, is hustling and forcing and trying to make things happen and accomplish the most amount and maximize my time. I want to relax and look at the trees and watch the clouds and be really present with my own energy and with the energy of the planet. And then also not create from the place of I get to have and these people don't have, but really, how do I create for all of us? And so that's one of the biggest shifts that we're in right now is moving into that unified space where it's not about me, it's about us. And this is where this activation, we had a huge activation yesterday that it was a peak in the activation cycle, and it's waking up everybody and giving that mirror to everybody to really look at themselves. So it's going to get really interesting here in the collective soon. And we're going to see people start to take accountability for where they've been out of alignment. And there's going to be a lot of heart centered expression and heartfelt apologies. And people who are embracing this are going to level up in their ascension process very quickly, too.
I just love everything you said. I'm like, where were you a year ago when I needed you? But it's such a perfect. I'm gonna say this is one of my favorite conversations in a long time. I think you just so accurate. Like everything you just shared, it resonates truth. It's a process that we're all going through, and I think this conversation will help a lot of people to understand what's going on energetically, and then we need to have this vocabulary now of of not explaining but understanding things more energetically, so we stop taking personally,
Yeah.
right? Like people taking like things are happening in their lives as a punishment. I just was a month ago, I realized, talking about ancestral trauma, all the imprints we carry from our ancestors, from our parents, or from this life. There's this huge, dense imprint of guilt that we all, like, we're born, boom, we have guilt in a sense. And I read is a huge limitation of like, oh, I struggle with relationships and money in my life because I did something bad in a past life and I've been punished. And I caught myself saying that. I'm like, wow, wow, let's release this because this is such a limiting belief. Because, and I mention this because a lot of people believe they're being punished and there's no punishment.
No, it's not punishment. Really, when we start to look at it, it's all about the energies coming full circle and looking at creation, right? The energy of creation. And then this gives us more awareness about what we really want to create. We're like, okay, this happened. I'm experiencing this. I don't want to experience this. I want to experience this instead, right? And that's where we gain so much awareness about how the energies of like cause and effect or the law of reciprocity comes into play, and then this gives us the opportunity to really use those energies in a way that is beneficial for everybody again. And then when we go through these periods of feeling punished, the thing that is the most important for us right now, because a lot of the world is going to be going into this, right? Feeling like they're punished because things can get very hard when you're facing your shadow or looking in the mirror, right? And holding the energy of compassion is one of the biggest keys to humanity moving forward right now. And that means compassion for self too, because we tend to, when we recognize that we've done something that we actually didn't want to create that. We didn't realize we were creating that. It can be easy to go into the guilt and the blame and the shame, but that actually hurts everybody else in the collective too, because it drops the person, whoever's holding that, into a very low space. And then instead of going into that, holding compassion and saying, wow, I didn't realize that, I'm so sorry to myself that I created that, I just didn't know. And then loving yourself despite making, things happen that you didn't actually want to happen, or hurting people with your choices. So that is, in my opinion, the path forward is through compassion for self and for others. And this is going to be huge because when people start looking at themselves in the mirror, and then they are able to look at others clearly too, because when you access multidimensional awareness, you see other people in depth as well. And so we can tend to, like with politics, certainly people are blaming, their smear campaigns left and right. I'm like, this is crazy. But instead of going into that, holding compassion and recognizing people have been under a lot of stress, people have been holding a lot of trauma. We don't know exactly what every single person is trying to process or heal from, or what their spiritual growth lessons are right now. And so recognizing that everybody is going through something, and then being able to hold that compassion for them and stay out of blame. Because if you blame another person, you're activating the energy of blame in your field.
Yeah.
It's not out there in the other person, it's in you. And so that's very detrimental. Whether you're blaming yourself or you're blaming somebody else, you're activating one of the lowest energies possible, which creates problems in your life because it also becomes something you're drawing the world in through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important universal laws for people to really embody now, because it's a truth that I'm a student of A Course in Miracles. The Course in Miracles states that giving is receiving. When if you attack somebody, you are attacking yourself. There's no such a thing like it's impossible in thoughts, by the way. I want to emphasize this because a lot of people think, oh, I'm just thinking this, I'm not saying. It doesn't matter. Energy travels in thoughts, energy travels in words. So if we are attacking somebody even in thoughts, it's lowering my energy and that person as well. So psychically we attacking both of us. So I think this is so valid, especially now in times of politics when people so easily attack the other members of the other party. My brothers and sisters, I say this with a lot of compassion. When you're doing that, you attack yourself, because there's a law that says what you do to one, you do to everyone. So to me, we can't take this universal, this spiritual laws, the spiritual principles. It's no longer enough to just know them. We need to apply them. We need to embody these spiritual principles, because we have the map already. We have the blueprint of how we can live in a state of joy, peace, freedom. We have the blueprint. We have all these books, these spiritual texts. We have Paul Selig is a great channeler. He's teaching this through his books now. So when you start reading different books and they always speak the same truth, it's almost like Source is trying everything to save us right now. He has deployed everything, books, channelers, teachers, guides. Everything is here to help us, to save us. And it's just a matter like, do I want to save myself? And in the spirit, in the Course in Miracles states, like you said, this is the time for us to come to unity, because we can save each other. It's through our brothers and sisters that we save each other. My salvation, it's your salvation, vice versa. So it is time to come together. And it's interesting because the darkness is using politics. It first used, I mean, darkness has been working for many years, or for our whole existence, but it used the pandemic to separate us, and it created tremendous separation through the pandemic. And now is the extreme of using politics. And to me, it's just like, if the darkness is desperate and it's getting louder, it's because our light is getting very, very strong too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is where people that are doing grid work or anchoring in light, right, and getting very committed to healing the inner conflict. And that's one of the biggest things, because if you have conflict in yourself, you're going to see conflict in the world, right? And that's where having compassion, you're not in a state of conflict anymore. You're in a state of neutrality, really. And so, looking at how the separation has been created, the divide and conquer strategies are obvious to many people. And what people choose to do with that really determines how hard their lessons are, because everybody's getting these lessons right now. Like you said, Source is just bringing it in everywhere, and nobody gets to escape it, right? Everyone has to face it. And knowing what you're committed to is one of the most important things, because people will be drawn into situations to determine, like, if they're committed to conflict or if they're committed to peace, right? What are they going to do in these tough situations? And then the more of us that hold space for others and don't buy into that conflict, right? If somebody cuts you off on the street and you get mad, in that moment, you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna hold peace right now, because I don't need to go into that space of right and wrong, good and bad, and all of that. So you're like, okay, have a good day, and really not taking things personally, recognizing everything is a mirror. And we are in spiritual tests, and it's not like we're being tested by somebody else. Our own spirits are testing us, and it's really more of a fortifying of our spiritual strength so that we can bring in more light, because that's what many of us are asking to do. How can I serve the collective in a greater way? Well, you have to expand a little bit more, be ready to run more light, purify yourself, heal yourself, face your inner conflict, And then when you create that inner union, right? So the masculine and feminine part of yourself, when you create that union, that's when you can access higher consciousness because there's no imbalance. And that's when you get the trinity, right? So you get three different things coming together, and that's a very stable, if you think about a tripod is a very stable energy to operate from. And so that's what we're doing right now with this, even though these dark forces are trying to keep people separate, many of us just aren't willing to buy into it. And it's infectious, right? When you're kind to somebody and everybody around is being kind to each other, it's very challenging to be that person that's being mean, you know? So, and of course, the media, a lot of the media promotes being unkind to each other. The violence on TV is greater than it ever has been, but the activations are also greater than they ever have been. And so people are recognizing, I don't want to watch that stuff. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to live that. And so the dark are very desperate right now. It's very obvious that they're desperate. And even with a lot of the different attempts to devastate different regions, what's happening is people are using that as an opportunity to come together more, right? So every single divide and conquer strategy is making the rest of us who are not buying into it look at that and say, you know what? I'm not committed to that. I'm committed to unity, and I'm going to help somebody today instead of blame somebody. I'm going to love myself today instead of judge myself. I'm going to release the judgments of others because, like I said earlier, we're all going through it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we need to commit and we need to bring the discipline to stay in this commitment daily. And one thing that is showing up a lot, well, first I want to address, it's interesting that you use the word destruction a few times here, because when I was going through something really heavy 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was over the weekend, which I'm grateful because I didn't need to work. But I was going through a deep process of, I would say, destruction, a destruction of a huge aspect of my ego. And it felt like death, is that process of death, is that process of dark night of the soul. And it was the first time in my own healing journey that I used the word destruction, because it felt right. And that's why it felt so intense too, because when we think about, ooh, destruction, right? It's easy to associate with something negative, but it's actually not. It's the dismantling, it's the destruction, this is structures inside us that that have kept us in this trance of like creating from the ego, right? They're wanting more, buying the American dream, that I need to have a certain amount of money, that I need to have a retirement account, that I need to have a certain status by a certain age. All that is dismantling. That's why a lot of us have like gone through deep disappointments, because like, well, I'm 54, I don't have that amount of money, I'm not married, I don't have what I thought I would have. So these deep beliefs are being destroyed, and it's necessary. It's like just a forest sometimes gets burned before fresh trees, fresh soil is available. So we go through this process. So let's speak a little bit about this, because let's say our listeners right now are like taking these words and like, oh my God, yeah, I'm going to the destruction. And what's coming up for a lot of my clients right now is a conversation I'm having with a lot of people, is exhaustion,
Mm.
which I think is a good sign. I'm not saying it's fun to be there, no, but I work with a lot of high achievers, business people. I'm sure you do too. It's America, basically. It's our culture. And they starting to realize, especially when I bring to their attention the aspect of the doer in them is exhausting, and they finally, they feel safe around me, and they finally admitting, yes, I'm exhausted. And that's when you start seeing tears coming, right? It's just that recognition of that part of you that is completely exhausted. So you think like Are you seeing this among your clients too? This level of exhaustion, which is a part of this destruction uh, time?
Absolutely. Yeah, the exhaustion is also a symptom of trauma healing. So
Yep.
when people start to get into those layers of trauma that have been there the whole time, exhaustion is a side effect of that. And it's really the nervous system is finally able to release all of these things that it's been holding until it was safe to release them, right? And so, even though the world doesn't appear safe, but the energies that are supporting us are creating safety, right? And so, the exhaustion and fatigue and the need for more sleep or more food, I'm seeing that in my clients for sure.
Yeah. Um, I love that. It's the side effect of healing trauma. And it really is. And I like to illustrate that with just a personal sharing. I feel like this last 3 years, I've been in a state of exhaustion a lot, like on and off. But I had days that it didn't matter how good I ate, what kind of workout I did, if I spent time in nature. It wasn't exhaustion that it wasn't about food. What of course we want to have the self-care system in place. But I think because I was doing so much deep healing, done so much inner child healing, ancestral healing, I experienced tremendous levels of exhaustion. But what I want to share is that now there's a fresh energy that is available for me, a different quad of life force that I never experienced before, that is really coming from this the source is creation. Is not coming from my efforts with nutrition or fitness or long hours of sleep, because sometimes you can be doing all those things and you're still going to be exhausted because it's an energetic level of exhaustion. So I just want to share that for anybody who's experiences exhaustion, to surrender to this, to not fight it, because like you said, there's healing happening in that exhaustion.
And also, as we level up in our light bodies, when we access higher levels of our multidimensional light body, we feel exhaustion as well because the body is now aware of that new energy and it has to adjust itself to be able to run such a fast and high frequency, right? So that's another side effect of like the spiritual expansion. Exhaustion definitely comes from that because the body has to catch up. The body doesn't know how to run these energies yet because it hasn't had this. So when we do a lot of our spiritual growth work, we get very tired from it and have to acclimate to it. And this is where, if you try to push yourself in those moments, you're actually going to get more exhausted. So, really, surrendering is a beautiful suggestion because that's really what works. You give yourself the space and listen to your body because your body is already doing its best all the time. And if it's telling you, I need sleep or I need to relax and rest, or sometimes you just need to listen to an audiobook or something like that and not try to force yourself to accomplish that list. And shifting into being rather than doing is really huge because everything, when we're all in a state of being, right, it doesn't mean we don't do things too. It just means that that's inspired action rather than forced action. It's flow, not force. And when we shift into that, we we come together perfectly like puzzle pieces do. We all just fit together in this divine harmony and divine timing. And so that's what this unity grid is helping us to discover as a way of being, that we don't have to bump into each other and force and try to jam things together, that everything can fall into place if we all listen to our inner guidance. So it's really very powerful to take the time to rest or to really listen to your body if it's exhausted, or even if your mind is, because we can go into mental exhaustion too. And giving ourselves the time to move through it when it's occurring is the most powerful, just like processing heavy emotions. If we swallow them back, they store in the body, and eventually, if we don't listen and don't let them come out, they manifest as disease.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think no, I think I know the invitation here. It's to get us out of this survival state that we've been living in for so long. And we know as coaches, as wellness teachers, that we can heal, we can grow, we can create instead of survival. So the first thing to start healing is actually to get out of this state of survival so the body can heal and repair. And I love to see that you and I are doing some modality of body work right now as well. You're doing spinal flow, I'm doing core synchronism, which is just a way to help people to come from survival to relearn how to relax, because people forgot how to relax, and it's not even by choice. It's like their nervous systems forgot how to go into a relaxing or parasympathetic system. So I felt like I needed to bring some kind of body work modality, because a lot of times it's not appropriate to sit here in my office with my clients and start talking about healing when their nervous system is so active and they're in fear, and I'm inviting them to get into their bodies when they're in a place of anxiety and fear. So it's nice to see that you're doing that work as well, to just get our clients, get people in a state that they feel safe. And then we can invite the emotions to be present and start moving people out of survival. But I want to talk about this because this has been such a topic of love and passion for me for many years. Like, get out of survival. So, speaking of survival, let's say I know right now two people, like two friends, right on top of my head, that have been in a state of survival. They're depleting their bank accounts, they depleting their retirement, they can't find steady jobs, and they very capable. I'm seeing this happening a lot. Very capable, skilled people not being able to find jobs, which is weird because I know something is trying to emerge there too. But let's say they are in this state of survival and we want to help them to be in a state of creation. So what would be the, step one or step two that you would recommend for them to take it so they can start manifesting from creation?
That would be facing their fears.
Yeah.
Because deep in those people you're mentioning, there has to be the fear of not surviving, right? And it can also be the recognition that they're purging for their lineage as well. So a lot of this work that we're doing, some of us have agreed to be the ones that feel it and move it through our bodies, right? And this is where any type of resistance is going to create, it's going to amplify the problem, right? So operating from the problem, you don't get the solution in the problem state. You get the solution when you let go and focus on something else, right? So if they're so focused on finding a job and thinking about it all the time, instead of going out into nature and just relaxing and paying attention to the birds or the clouds, it's in those moments that things can really shift for us. So, facing the fear, recognizing what is my deepest fear, and usually that's like, I won't survive. That is, the human body has that fear. The spirit knows that it's eternal, right? So, when we're facing these fears, we have to look at, okay, what if that happens? If that happens, then when we ask that question, what if it happens? We access that deep fear and it starts moving. We want it to move because when we push it down, we're like, I don't want to feel this fear. No, that can't happen. That's resistance, right? And that locks it into place. The fear wants to move. It needs to move. It's got a story to tell. Anything that's trapped in our body has a story to tell. And if we listen to the story and allow it to come up and come out and validate why it's there too, we're not validating that it needs to stay. We're validating that it's there because our body is so brilliant that it's trying to protect us.
That
And then
is that is beautiful. I love that. That fear wants to come out because it has a story to tell. That's such a beautiful way. It's another way to describing inner child healing. I know, inner child, it might be a term that a lot of people resist, talk about resistance, but just that every emotion, every suppressed emotion or repressed emotion has a story to tell. It wants to be seen, wants to be heard, and that itself is the healing.
Hmm. Yeah. And then once you face those, you listen to those stories, then they're neutral after that. It's been told. It doesn't have to keep like coming at you to be heard. So
Yeah.
it's a very powerful way to move through things. Not fun. It's
Not
not
fun.
fun
And
to be.
let's talk about the resistance because this shows up a lot. Again, I'm gonna bring the high, the very like hustlers, high achievers that have very strong protectors. And I'm very used to their protectors. Their protectors used say, no, I cannot let go this perfectionism is the very common. I can't let go this perfectionist because it's the perfectionist in me that makes sure I make enough money for my children, that I keep this lifestyle, that I can have enough money to send my kids to college, that I can afford the house because I want to buy another house. I need this part, right? So what is your approach with that? Well, first of all, we nobody can release anything. We can help anybody to release anything unless they really want to let go. But how? I'm curious to hear what is your approach when you know that is also the part that is hurting them, the anxious one, the perfectionist, the hustler, whatever that is.
Yeah, I like to talk about the different parts with them and how when we create parts, we create separation within ourselves and it creates inner conflict. So we
Mm,
have to take the different parts and bring them together. So you take the part that is the one that needs to achieve, and then you take the part that needs to relax.
mm,
And you bring those two together so that because really the ultimate goal of every single part within us is inner peace. Every single part is created to create inner peace. So the
yeah.
part that was created, like I have to do all of these things so I can be at peace. I have to relax so I can be at peace. I have to, and so we'll end up sometimes with many different parts that we create through our lives, and they all serve a great purpose. They're all a wonderful part of us. It's just when they start going in different directions, we have that inner conflict, and then we tend to listen to one part and then we'll listen to another, and we get scattered and confused. So, really listening to the parts, what they want, and then bringing them together through it's an exercise that I call parts integration.
Yes,
And
from NLP. Such a
yeah,
powerful, yeah,
exactly.
it's like
Yeah.
both parts want the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And so when you do that with all the different parts, and it may take a while depending on how many that you've created, right? But then when you bring them all together through that process, things can shift.
Yeah, I thank you for that reminder because I don't utilize a lot of these strategies from NLP because a lot of them are so like mental and scripted. But it was
Mhm.
just recently that I brought this practice of parts integration back because I think it's so powerful to knowledge that all parts love you so much. They want the same thing. It's just they can become exhausted, they become over functional and they take over, and that starts to ignore that part that needs playfulness, that needs relaxation, that needs resting. But it's like it's to me, I like it better than internal family system. Internal family system can get a little bit too complicated with bringing all the and almost giving too much life for each part. I just prefer I prefer to keep it simple with parts integration. So I think this is so important. So know that every part of us want the same thing. Because one mistake I made in my healing journey, I remember, and we can we should record an entire podcast just speak about all the pitfalls and traps that we fall out, so how we can create another personality as the healer in us. But I was rejecting, instead of really loving all the parts, I caught myself rejecting the parts, like, oh, I don't want this doer here anymore. It was a rejection of the ego in a way, and it's like, that would create another separation inside me. So I call myself, I'm just creating more separation. So I'm sharing this because at the end of the day, it's all about bringing everything together back to wholeness, isn't it?
It really is through a compassionate approach, not making any part of you wrong. And that's, really when we look at humanity, we're all parts. We're
Yes,
all
we are.
it's so coming together with others too. And, you know, recognizing also that coming together with somebody doesn't mean it has to be in the physical, right? Because some people are not ready for unity, but staying out of judgment of them and staying in your heart-centered approach and compassionate approach with regards to how you view them or how you hold your perspectives about them. And this can be anybody, right? Or everybody. And so allowing yourself to hold the idea and the feelings that every single person is source, every single person is relevant, every single person really deep down wants the same thing. And that is inner peace. We all want inner peace. We want to feel okay. We want to feel like we belong, that we're part of something. And when we don't, we act out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in the world right now, a lot of acting out and then operating from that survival space, like I got to get what's mine and I just have to get it and hoard it and keep everybody away and then we protect ourselves from more pain too, and that's a really huge thing that's coming up right now as well. We naturally move away from pain. We don't want to feel it. And so when we have a bad experience with people, and then these other people come into our lives, we're naturally going to have a barrier there that then we see through that filter. And often that will create the same experience again until we drop that filter. And it doesn't mean allowing anything toxic into your life, but it means making sure that we stay open to everybody being source, everybody being relevant, exactly where they're at. They're doing just fine where they're at. Even if it seems unacceptable to us in that moment, we have to recognize like they are where they are, and we need to allow them the space for their personal growth and their personal lessons.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one that took me a long time to learn as I practice a lot of forgiveness towards myself. And as I accept more myself, it was inevitable for me to accept everybody where they were. And I know when I'm not accepting somebody or when I'm judging somebody, I'm in a place of conflict within myself. And I think this is the biggest thing. And I think you mentioned the beginning of this podcast about how more and more people are going to start uh, being accountable, and that process is not fun, but they're going to be accountable and understand that everyone is a mirror. And these days, if somebody triggers me, if somebody becomes the mirror discomfort for me, I'm grateful because I still care a lot of things in my unconscious. And when somebody triggers me, I know, oh, I got something to work with here, something that I've been holding. I want to let go. So it can be such a beautiful invitation, a gift. And I know it might take a long time for people to get there, but we all get there. And this has been such an amazing conversation. And there's part of me like, I know I need to let you go soon, but I don't want to let you go. So I'm going to ask maybe a final question here. Are you hopeful? Are you optimistic about the future?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Because what we're seeing right now in the world is a product of past creation. And
Mhm.
what we're doing with what we see in the world right now is a future creation. So we're able to take all of this, all of these spiritual growth lessons, all of the pain and suffering, we're neutralizing that, which means we're not creating through it anymore. And so things will get better and better and better. Although humanity, going through like the people who have not been activated now are being activated, it can maybe drop a little bit and be hard to watch others go through their lessons, but overall everything is getting better and better because of the awareness is increasing and the desire for service. I mean, now more than ever we have people that want to be in service, they want to be healers, they want to create retreats, they want to
It's
um,
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. One thing I have noticed in our industry, for example, that I'm loving watching, coaching programs, you know, teachings, even one-on-one work that used to cost $300, $400, $500. Now we all call to like, no, you can join me for $5 a month. You can do this. Like, we're no longer in the egoic drive of like, no, this needs to be very expensive. Like, I'm seeing all of us dropping our prices, all of us creating content that is, if it's not free, it's like $20. So there's this call for service, and I'm watching you doing that, I'm doing that. Other coaches are making things that didn't used to be affordable because we are so called to serve right now. I have to share that.
Yeah, yeah, it's really beautiful. And
It
so
is.
many people are like, I just want to get into service work too.
Yeah.
So many people. And if you think about it, when we all start serving each other, everybody wins. So we're shifting into a time where it's a win-win rather than a win-lose. And really, the way I view it is you can have a win-win or you can have a lose-lose, but
Yeah.
there is no win-lose.
No. Yeah. God, I
Yeah.
love it so much, so much, so much hope, so much optimism, so much healing just in this conversation. I'm so glad we had this conversation, not accidentally on November 5th, because I think a lot of people need words of hope right now. So it's fair to say, as we wrap it up here, that there's a storm energy. You use one of your videos. I think you even talk about, and we are going through energetic storm. So a lot of us are experiencing, let's say, if I'm experiencing a lot of joy and bliss now, I want to remind everyone, you might not see all the tears, all the anxieties, and all the depression state that I've been as well. And I know Glacia has been through that as well. But let's, what can we say now, Glacia, for the people who are in the storm? They are in a deep state of fear, despair, depression, anxiety. What words could we share with them right now?
I want to remind them that the reason they're in that is because they've asked for something greater and it's on its way to them. They just have to get through the storm. It's coming in. It's everything that they've been asking for, the peace, the joy, the connection, the unity, the opportunities. It's all on its way. And so, in order to make room for that, all this stuff has to be stirred up and cleared out and faced. And that's why this is happening. Otherwise, if they weren't asking for something greater and aligned with something greater, they wouldn't have to create the space for something greater.
Wow. So the invitations for all of them to do the work.
Yeah, to do the work and to know that there will be moments of hopelessness. And there's two different perspectives to look from: the mouse that's on the ground in all of the storm, and the eagle that's above it, which would be like the higher self and the higher consciousness, right? And as we expand up into that higher consciousness, we will start to receive collectively, receive through ourselves the path forward, right?
Yeah.
And so making sure that you go between those two views and not just stay at the level of the mouse, which is the problem, but also rise to the solution
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. And I'm going to complete that by saying, don't do this work alone. Work with a guide, work with a teacher, reach out to Glacia, reach out to me, or reach out to somebody in your community that you want to do, that can guide you to this work, because it can feel dark, it can feel very lonely. It's like you're gonna have your period like 40 days in the desert, or the dark nights of the soul, or you go to the cave like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. You're gonna go to that, but it doesn't have to be that hard. Don't do the work alone. So get guides, teachers, where we bring a community together here. So reach out, ask for help. That's what I want to say at the end.
Beautiful.
Glacia, this has been amazing. I think I can't think of a better time and better moment for this conversation. And it was such a pleasure to be with you. I'm feeling high. I'm feeling even better than I felt this morning. So I so appreciate the work you're doing, because Your healing is my healing. Your healing is our planet's healing. So I so appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you so much. Much love to you, my sister.
Oh, thank you. Likewise to you as well. Thanks for having me.
Much love.